So welcome everyone to digi.me webinar. We're concentrating today on how in the medical arena, particularly, you can get direct data directly from individuals, which is rich and deep and highly useful, but without any coding whatsoever. And we will conclude the presentation section with a demonstration, which will actually show you this live. We're going to start with a presentation for about 15 minutes, thereabouts, then the demonstration, and then we'll have a Q&A for as long as you may have questions. If you have any questions at all while your presentation is going on or the demonstration, then please feel free to put those directly in as you think of them, rather than waiting, and we will take those first in the Q&A session. So if we look at the health data ecosystem today, we've got a number of facilities, whether that's healthcare in something like the NHS in the UK, which is connected up together, the research community, patient-derived data, apps, etc. But there's very little data flowing between them. There are many gaps. So even within an integrated health system, there isn't data flowing from or to all participants, let alone when we're looking at patient-derived data or trying to use apps, whether they're consumer apps or health service apps, on the data. And of course, it's relatively complicated for researchers to get access to data. And even if they could get access to data, how do you handle patient consent? Now, of course, the simple solution, in simple and inverted commas, is let's connect everything point to point, but that's just fundamentally impractical. Now, we've tried it even within limited domains and failed, let alone when we look at the much wider connections that you can have. So what digi.me is based on, and what the principle of patient centricity is based on, is that actually if you put the patient in the middle of the data transfers, then actually all of the connections become straightforward. And this is what we're going to demonstrate today. And not only straightforward, it enables all parts of the ecosystem to have access to all of the data with, of course, the patient's consent. Now, that doesn't mean to say you then remove the other connections. So other connections would still remain. Of course they will, because they're there for a reason. But it is by having the patient in the middle that you can connect everything together. And it actually turns out to be simpler and very straightforward. And that is the point of what we're trying to demonstrate to you today. And it's quite clear that when we look at not just in health, but across the spectrum of different aspects dealing with individuals, that we need better citizen data. And that is why it's not just patient centricity, there's a move to citizen or human centricity throughout the world. And that's enabled through laws like the EU General Data Protection Regulation, the US California Consumer Privacy Act, the Australian Consumer Data Rights, and many others around the world, which are saying that the individual has the right of their data electronically. And you'll see that by using that right and by expanding how that can then be implemented for an individual, we solve the problem of data transfers. And it really comes down to an understanding that we cannot connect everything to everything, irrespective of consent. It is just impractical. There are too many stovepipes, too many difficulties to bring all of that data together. But if we understand three aspects, so the first being that from an individual's perspective, only the individual, so only you, know where you've got your GP, which hospitals, which bank accounts, which social networks, which wearables you use. Only you, the individual, has a right of full access to a copy of the data, not partial, not constrained by some third-party company because they're worried that somebody else might do something in competition or whatever. No, the individual has a right of full access to all of their data. And only the individual has unlimited data usage rights. They can do whatever they like with their data, and we do today. Now, as an example, I could take my medical data, print it off, put it on the windows of my car and drive around and show the world if I liked. Might be a bit odd, but I'm allowed to do that. If anyone else was to do that, then that's a fine or prison time, depending upon the jurisdiction, breach of my privacy. But I have unlimited usage rights. And therefore, when you consider those three things and recognizing the problems we have anywhere else, if you're going to bring all the data about an individual together, you can only do it at the individual. So when we think about this in a medical scenario, it's not just my GP and hospital data and my wearables genomics, but it might be other data, right? It might be my finance data, it might be my social data and other information which can be used in a medical context, or an app that's keeping me healthy, whichever that may be, my purchases, for example. And so whatever the domain, whatever you're looking at, if you want to bring multiple strands of information and all of that data together, you have to do it at the individual. And the good news is that when you do it at the individual, privacy and security and consent come for free because it gets to the individual. Now, this whole philosophy of patient centricity or human centricity or customer centricity, depending upon where you are, it isn't a digi.me invention. We happen to have built the thing that enables it, but it's been widely discussed. And Future Agenda have had multiple sessions on this all around the world. We'll be sending out a copy of this presentation to everyone after the event, and you can look at these links and dig deeper into it. But the futureofpatient.org is a very good resource. Also, and at this bit.ly link, this isn't just one company, digi.me, that's come up with this and made it use. For example, even over 2 years ago, there was a data mobility infrastructure project in the UK looked at by the government, the Department of Culture, Media and Sport and the Information Commissioner's Office, containing these companies that we show here, which concluded that, yes, this was feasible, yes, it worked, yes, it provided value. So the whole aspects of human centricity have been well looked at. What we're talking about today is making that real. So rather than being academic, it actually exists here today. So within digi.me, that's our mission, to make everybody, enable them to make better use of their personal data, whether that's for their own personal health, whether that's to aid researchers for critical diseases or anything else, whether that's in retail, whether that's in banking or whatever else it may be. Now, the way this works, the simple way that we're going to demonstrate to you today is, and the key aspect to this, is the data goes to the individual first before it goes to a requesting service. So if you're on and you're a service, if you're a researcher, for example, that's your service. You're providing a research service. And you have a value exchange with the individual. Now, that might be a philanthropic sharing of the data from the individual for research. You might be paying them. It might be research to do with a disease that they actually have. And so they're highly engaged. It doesn't matter. That's between the service and the individual. But you would like data from the individual. So how do you do it? Well, actually, you use digi.me. You will have registered for what's called a consent certificate, and you'll see this shortly. You put that into our API or SDK if you're coding, but we'll show you how to do it without coding. And that opens up a consent certificate so an individual can see their data, what that's being asked for and why. If they're happy, they then authenticate the data channel so that they could agree that digi.me on their behalf could access their NHS GP records, for example. That data will then be pulled into their own store of data, which is encrypted for the individual, is then extracted, transformed, normalized to a single form. So in health data terms, HL7 FHIR, no matter what the source data is, and then returned to the service. So it's a very quick and easy. The individuals don't have to have known about digi.me before you as a service can use it to get data from there. Now, this service is built on a very large tech stack. I won't go through all of the pieces. Suffice it to say that it's been audited by the health services of the UK, Holland, UK, Holland, Iceland. We've in 270 hospitals in the US. That's just the health data, but it's also been audited by others, and we've got finance data. We've got health data, wearables, finance, social, and media data, all available today. And you can ask an individual for any of that data, and if the value exchange is there for them, they will say yes. So the key is you can integrate our capability, if you understand software terms, by going to our developer website, developers.digi.me, give you that link again in a minute, register for a consent certificate and put that into the API. But we've also made it very easy for you to get access to data with no coding at all. You could do this tomorrow. In fact, even later today. And I'm going to demonstrate that now through our playground capability. So I'm going to stop there and pull up the playground. Dan, can you just confirm that's being seen?
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So if you go to play.digi.me, it brings up this page. Now you can sign up here to get your own playground, which will allow you to send your own patients or customers there to share data with you. But what I'm going to do to start with is just to demonstrate how digi.me works using the demo mode. And you can do this yourself with your own data. So we'll try demo mode. Now, what you've got here is a web page. Could be any web page. You could design your own web page with your own explanations of why you want data, etc. And then you end up asking the individual, will you share this data with me? And so they will then select which data they're going to share, or you might only give them one. It might just be UK GP records or wearable, whatever it may be. Here, in the default playground, we only allow people to use social data. And we do that deliberately because to access other data, you do need to contact us. We do a little KYC, make sure that everything is being done properly, and then we can allow access to the health data, etc. But you can do this today with social data. So I've said I'm happy to share social data. So Playground now triggers the consent certificate. Now, this consent certificate is a standard form. It's designed to meet the bar for explicit and informed consent under GDPR in Europe and the UK, but also under all the privacy legislation that's currently extant around the world. And so a simple statement, why do you want my data? Well, it might be to research into a particular disease. It might be to provide health advice. In this case, it's to try the digi.me SDK. So it's to prove that it's working. So what data am I, the individual, going to share if I say yes? Here it's going to be Twitter data. But what's going to happen to it? Well, it's going to be sent off my device. It is actually going to leave me, the individual, and go to this web app. Right? But in this particular instance, the web app is not going to share it with a third party. So it's only for the use of this particular service that I am not logged into, but on their website. And in fact, the service isn't going to keep the data. Now, these three may seem odd, but Why sent off device? Surely the data always goes off device. Well, not necessarily. I might have a diabetes app, say, on my phone, and that might receive the data, and it might be able to process all the data on my phone and give me my advice without any data leaving my phone. So that is an option. So therefore, that's why sent off device, not sent off device. Shared with third parties or not, that's a critical thing. A lot of people are happy to share for the specific purpose they're being asked for, but they don't obviously necessarily want to see their data shared unless that is part of the value proposition, but that has to be clear. And whether the data is kept or not is again up to the service. Some services receive the data, process it, extract the features they're interested in, and then throw away the data. Others want to keep it for long-term use. So you have to say, in this instance, this is a demonstration. The data is not going to be shared and not kept. I can review for extra information, but now, in this case, I'm going to give access. I'm happy to share my data for this demonstration. And now, I'm asked to authenticate the channel. Now, if this had been the NHS data, I would have a different login. If this was bank data, it'd be my bank login. But in this case, it's Twitter. So I'm authorizing that. Now, that is all I have to do as a patient or as a person in this demonstration. And now what's happening is digi.me is connecting to Twitter, is bringing all the data down and storing it in a repository for me, Julian, encrypted with a key that digi.me does not hold, and then is extracting the data, normalizing it, and sending it to in this case, the web app. And in the time it took me to describe it, you've seen that a year's worth of Twitter data has been received by this web app. Now, normally it wouldn't display it on screen because this is meaningless unless you're a data person. But the idea here is to demonstrate exactly how it works, to show it. All data is normalized. So between these curly brackets, which is in JSON form, you've got a tweet or a retweet or a favorite or whatever else. And if you go to the developer's website, there's documentation that you can look at, which explains all the services and the objects from there and allows you to go into more detail. But the key of what we're after today is how can you, as services or researchers, how can you get data from multiple patients like me, Julian, without having to do the coding? Well, if we go back to Playground, there was ability for you to log in, create your own service. And this is your own mini survey capability that can be provided without any coding whatsoever. And so therefore, when you've registered, you get your own link that you can give to your patients, the people you're asking for data from. And that ends up a bit like the demo, except it has different data at the top and bottom of it. And when people share their data, and here you can see some data has been shared. This is a demo one that I've just created. Here they've only shared Twitter, Facebook, and Facebook pages, which is all I asked them to do. And I can download them as CSV files, that data in columns, if I want to do it, if I just want to do some straightforward analysis, or if I want to have all the data together in a master JSON file to use in any off-the-shelf data analytics tools, then I can do that. Now, you could be up and running and doing this in the next 10 minutes as soon as you finish this webinar. You just go to play.digi.me and you will get, if you sign up, you do your settings to say what you want to say on the page, and then you get a link which you can share with people. So if I put that link in and do there, you'll see J Ranger Limited, that's my name, Julian Ranger. And what I'm doing here is saying what I'm doing. I haven't put a lot of information in, and there's a code there if I want to reward people for whatever, for sharing their data with me. And I can select the social data there. Now, by default, you can only do this by social data. So you can try it, experiment, and go from there. If you then want access to health or wearables data, if you contact us, we can make a version of Playground available for you where you can ask for that data. So I'll now go back to the presentation. Wanted to emphasize the two features then on Playground you can do today, which is a demonstration and your own survey capability. If you did want to code, if you did want to bring it into your existing web service or app or whatever else, then actually the developers portal, which is at developers.digi.me, gives you everything you need to be able to do that. We do obviously have support capability. So if you look at how to start, you can register on our Slack channels, etc. Tarek here is our CTO, who'll be able to answer any questions as well on how we support people. So you can try yourself at play.digi.me. So now drawing to the end of the presentation, and we'll be starting Q&A. But just before we do that, the key here of what we're saying is you today can get access to the highest quality data direct from the individual. You know that the data is valid because digi.me has gone to the source to get the data, has given it to the individual and encrypted it, but it is encrypted in such a way it can't be changed. So therefore, the data is exactly what was received by the individual, and you receive it with consent. So you meet all the privacy legislation. You don't need to go and get any further approvals. You can immediately today, so if you're in the UK, for example, get access to UK GP data, get access to wearables data, bank, social, and other information today from individuals, and provide the service that you want to do. If you want more details after this webinar, please contact Dan at digi.me, and the two sites for us, apart from the main digi.me sites, are here on the left, play.digi.me and developers.digi.me.